Wait for it. Hey guys, it's Casual Friday. That means it's Nancy Matz Friday. And we're going to be discussing what happens when you or your loved ones are at the brink of death. We'll be right back. Grab your popcorn and snacks. Find a comfy spot, take a seat or lie down, and let me transport you to a place of fantasy, ghost stories, ancient legends, odd creatures, alien encounters, and other magical topics. You may even decide to join the conversation. From faraway lands to your own backyard, with a small dash of pixie dust, turn out the lights and open your minds. The journey is about to begin. Hey everybody, happy Friday. Sorry about that. I guess it's kicking it back at me, which it never did before. That's new to me. Anyway, my name is Charlotte. I'm going to be your host for the next hour. I'm also the owner of the California Haunts Paranormal Investigation Team, based out of sunny, well, not so sunny right now, Sacramento. We're 45 strong up and down the state, and that means we can help you no matter where you're located. It may take us a couple days to get to you because it's a big state, but we do have psychics on staff to help with that. If you need to find us, Google us on Facebook under California Haunts Paranormal, and we will just pop right on up. And we've got multitude sites on Facebook. You can also find us at TikTok as California Haunts, and at Twitter as California Haunts, and at Twitch as Cal Haunts. We also are on Instagram. I'm Ghosty Gal, all lowercase. And you can find us at YouTube, of course, at youtube.com/California Haunts Radio. If you are watching from Facebook, and a lot of you are, and you haven't done so already, you like what you see tonight, please be sure to hit that follow button and hit some thumbs up and some happy faces. We're always looking for followers, but by hitting that thumbs up, it's great because what happens is it puts us up higher in the FYP, and then Facebook will send us out to a lot of other people, so we get more known. Same thing with YouTube; it works the same way. If you haven't checked this out, our more than 800 videos are sitting over there, and be sure to subscribe, because that helps us with their FYP as well, just like you commenting during the show. Anyway, welcome. Tonight we've got a great show lined up for you. As always, Medium Nancy Matz has a great topic that she's going to be just talking about tonight. And, you always wonder those moments just before somebody passes away, what happens to them as they're passing away. And I've heard a lot of stories about people like where they imagine, where they're going. It's kind of like having a dream. You imagine where you're going, where you're going. Like my best friend was really into Disneyland, and that's what she imagined. That's what she told me she was going to do. She was going to imagine that she was in Disneyland when she got near death. So Nancy's going to be talking about that stuff. She knows a lot more about it than I do. So let's bring her in and get the show on the road.
Hi, everybody. What a topic. I've been spending a few hours every few days writing this up, and it's a complex topic, but it doesn't take a lot of time. So I will embellish what I have seen over the years. And I did not look at other sites of people well-intentioned talking of this. I know that most people are aware that I was born with this condition. Saw my father after he died at 6. And from then on, after my mother sugar fast at me, don't you do that again. It was until I was high school that it kind of came full force again in such strange ways. I did have a near-death experience about within 6 months of where my father was killed, maybe a year. And I did experience that. And of course, that drew me to Raymond Moody and all the wonderful people that talk about near-death experiences and past lives with children, reincarnation issues. It's just, I've had 33 years of getting way too many books before Kindle was ready, wanting to read them all, and problems with my eyes. Shar and I have had a cold the first couple of weeks, and I didn't get it as bad as her, but you can still hear it comes and goes like a wave like this. And of course, it's going to be tonight. I talked on the phone quite a few hours today, but so we're going to be fine. I just want to talk about this. I want to talk I've had comments, I like it when you talk about movies, I did find some new movies that I would like to talk about in regard to the first moments of dying and then passing over. Um, I'm always open to someone write me a note, but please don't make it personal. This is a topic that maybe I don't want to talk with you about a child that died. A lot of clients call me up and they want to know who greeted that loved one. And I've done this for so long.
Mhm.
And I'm able to describe visually who greets us, of all things, right? So once upon a time, how many years ago, someone said, well, who greeted my loved one? And I thought, well, how am I supposed to know? Maybe I better see them. And all of a sudden, click. So ever since then, I've been able to see spirit in a different ways. And one of my ways I'm so grateful is be able to have vision in that way. It kept me more strange. And I see ghosties everywhere. Ghosts like insane, going to be insane kind of progress. And I've done ghost investigations with Shar for a long time, as well as when she met me at the cemetery, Sacramento Cemetery, downtown Sacramento at 10th and Broadway. And so I've been exposed to spirits a long time. And then I've had incidences, and I shared this a couple weeks ago. Kathy Pert, Peart, I believe, curator at the Rockland Cemetery, had me go out. And some of these incidences that happen, no longer am I thinking of myself insane. I'm now thinking of myself as an instrument that people need to get answers. If I put my ego in the way, oh, well, look at me, I can do this, scares the dickens out of me because I don't want anything blocked. So I call myself a receiver. Put my hands down, Nancy. I know. Char says, Nancy, move her hands along. So I did a cemetery tour and with her. And I told her ahead of time, oh, I don't mind doing this. I do like it because I get to see new spirit people and I get to meet living people first too, right? For the
Mhm.
first time. And so she brought a little crowd and she says, oh, these people really interested. And I was directed to the path to the left. And a man jumped up and rushed toward me. And I went, oh my God. He's like, oh, what's this about? Right? It scared me. And he says, tell them I did not commit suicide. The road was wet. And of course, I always say to people, I'm going to hear something. I'm not going to hear something. I'm going to see somebody. I'm not going to see somebody. So I saw him and I described him real quick. And I said, Kathy, he wants me to tell somebody here that he didn't commit suicide, that the road was wet and he slid into the road. Now, I'm going to take this another step, so bear with me here. She turns around and talks to his mother. And of course, everybody was in denial. Oh, he committed suicide. I mean, he was depressed. And I'm standing there like a dummy going, well, that's not what I heard. A few weeks later, they called. She calls me up and says, guess what? The family investigated and it had rained that night and he slipped into the curb. When he did, remember, I'm trying to make a bigger picture so we can talk with interest tonight. When he did, he crashed into the curb and it looked like he went to the right. And when he did, it almost makes me feel like at an angle, not straight into the hillside, but maybe the tire in the back grabbed the road and the front of the car crashed into the hillside. And when it did, it went crunk like this, right? And then he was propelled into the windshield. And he was shocked. So when he was thrown, I hope everybody could hear me. I had to wait. The microphone's pushed up. So when he was propelled out of his body, it was very quick. And I remember, excuse me as I say this, I remember him showing me and telling me that he floated out of his body full formed, as though he even had his shoes and socks on, looking at this mess and going, what the blank? Can you imagine? And they say, oh, when we pass over, the angels and everybody's wonderful, wonderful. And it's not always. It was a shock to him. There was a woman I would call grandmother. So if he was propelled from the driver's side, which was the left side, through the car to the roof that was crushed into the hillside, and he's looking down. He's like, "What? What?" And of course, they want to get back in their body, which is terribly upsetting to me. And he knows he can't. And he looks up and he sees this old grandma looking person. And she says, "You can't go back. You got to come with me. I don't want to leave." And then he hears from the family saying, "Oh, he committed suicide," and he's distraught. And I don't want someone to call me and say, "Oh, was my family member distraught?" They do get distraught. And I'll tell you another example is like at the moment of death, it's so quick, they're thrown out of their body. And I want to give you a couple examples because we're going to start at a comfortable place and we're going to go to a really nice place because this is absolutely amazing to me. When I think of this gentleman, he was young, at 40-ish, I think. I don't know for sure. Kathy will have to get back to me if she hears this. And after she explained that this was the time he needed to leave, "You're coming with me now." Oh, it was almost like, "Oh, I get this a lot. Oh, I'm alive." It's not like, it's not lights out. So shocked, so surprised. So, excuse me here. Hold on a second. As Shara said, she was better today. I'm thinking, me too, but listen. So it was a shock, but a recovery was very quickly because once you know you can't go back, then it's easier to accept it. There's a lady I met, and I've told the story of her family, Pat and her daughter who died of leukemia. Pat was holding on to her daughter's hand when she was dying. She was a late teen, 16, 17 years old. I'm not positive for sure. It's been so many years. And as I put my mind to that date, I had backed up in time. So the teenager might have died a couple, 2 or 3 years earlier, but it was February of 92 that I met Pat at Vacaville Psychic Fair. And we were talking, and she spoke to me about the daughter dying of leukemia. And as she's holding onto the daughter's hand, she was grasping it very tight, as though to say, "I can't let you go, so I'm going to hold on to you to keep you here." And as I put my mind to it, I came in at the foot of the bed to the left. So I was looking at the lady, Pat, to my right side, which would have been the daughter's left hand. And I could see Pat holding on to her hand. And I don't remember saying anything at the moment, though I have notes. Pat has given me full permission to talk to her and write this up, and I will eventually. And the daughter was halfway out of her body, and to her right shoulder was an opening, and in the opening to the other side was a landscape of families, of people got together and they're having picnics in the afterlife. And unfortunately, we hear of families passing together. And what I saw was what I would call a park environment. And through that visual opening was a beautiful woman. And we're now all greeted by family members that we would know. So a teenage girl was greeted by a celestial being. That's the only way I can describe it. A lot of people hold on to, "I want to be greeted by so and so, a celestial being, whatever." And this young woman must have proposed a thought. "Well, I see an angel." And we get what we want. And she, with her right hand, was holding on to the angel. Her left hand was gripping mom. And she looked at me, which startled me. She says, "Tell mom to let go of my hand." And this was something that I had never heard because I'm talking of the past. And I says, "Oh, Pat, you're holding onto her hand so tight. Let go." And this is where my theory of making an apology of some action or words that you said in the past, go back and forgive yourself, reword it, because this action proved to me that we can back up in time to right a wrong where the domino effect of negative can go forward. "Pat, your hand, you're just grabbing." "Oh, I didn't want to let her go." And I says, "Let her go." And in the visual of this happening, Pat's hand loosened up. And as she did so, the daughter released and went with the angel. Of course, she did pass at that moment, which was very hard for Pat, the daughter. But at the same time, I was very aware of a lot of dynamics that were happening that I knew at that moment. I said, Pat, may I please have your permission? And the next story is also Pat's family. And I wanted to share that Pat had other children and another daughter. And the daughter was older, grew older. And talked to Pat a few times. I'm not positive she's alive, but I do have written permission from her. And she was desperately in love and engaged to a young man. And the young man, which is very difficult because I can't tell his age, he was a nice built, little thicker bodied man. And he had purchased, was driving what we would call an open car. There's lots of them out there. The year would I wouldn't know one from another. My first husband and I, we had an Alfa Romeo Veloce Spider, and that small, kind of a coffin-shaped little car is what he was driving, but a little bigger. Now, it wasn't a Mustang without the top. It was something compact, and it could have been another sports car of greater value. But you ask me what car type is, and I just go, whoop, whoop. So he was driving in the foothills in the mountains of Sierra. It was springtime, and he had a short shirt on, and he had slacks, and he was driving curves in a mountain, and unfortunately, he was fussing with his either radio or cassettes. We had cassettes in those. I don't know if we had cassettes. Yeah, we had cassettes. He was changing music, and I think it was a cassette. I don't think it was a radio. And he bent down to look, and when he looked up, a truck coming the other way around a curve drifted over the line, and it was head on. He was killed instantly. What curious, you see in cartoons like this, and he was jetted, his spirit, flash out of his body, just poof, like this, fully clothed in his mind. Because remember, these two individuals, the one who had the crash into the mountain, and this gentleman, had seen their bodies that day, and they knew what they were wearing. Because spirit people tell me, well, I don't want to create my socks and shoes. I don't remember what pair of socks I had on. And I don't know about men, but women, we have 10 different colors of stripes. And I, I have Winnie the Pooh cups. I have some socks my kids gave me, the Winnie the Pooh series type of thing. And I won't remember which one I had on. So it's sometimes easier not to create that. So after a while, we forget what we're wearing. But these two men, this man was pushed out of his body. And as though you can see with a big rubber band, you go, boom, and this person goes in the air and their arms are out in front and their legs are out in front of them. And he also said words blah, 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 that I can't repeat. And he was a young man, and he looked at his car being crashed and going down the hill. It was a terrible accident. And he knew instantly that he could not get back in it. And I remember him standing there. Listen to me say that. I remember him standing in the air, not knowing what to do. And behind him, I can remember behind him, a tall, lanky, bigger bone man. I don't know what side the family he was on, was there to greet him and say, well, you did it this time. You can't go back to that mess. And he had a good chuckle. The man was a heavy jaw. And I remember thinking the teeth, because he was an era where not a lot of cosmetic dentistry was done, little spaces between all his teeth, but a little thinner face. And he was one of those men that aged handsomely, but thin. And anyway, he was very distinguished. But it was kind of like he lived in the country. He had comfortable clothes on. And the guy turned around, look at this guy in his blue gray coloring. Now what? Now what? And that's all that I was given, because I believe that he left easier. He had a shock, but then there would be no coming back from that accident. And I want to bring and I'm going to go into one movie, and then I want to go to the beginning of not the accident, but how I was getting your attention with what I was talking to you about first. Now we'll go into what I have a perception of people dying, because I was in hospice for a while. And then the people that come to me with relatives who died, I've seen them when they pass over and what's happened to them. And some of them are very interesting. So the movie Doctor Strange, the gentleman uh, that was in the car accident because he was a surgeon, and he's looking for enlightenment to figure out how he can live his life or find somebody that can give him his hands back. And this was one of those Marvel movie characters. And he meets the master of the, I don't know what group it was, but she shows up a few times in other Marvel movies. And I'm sure everybody, Strange, Doctor Strange, is that what the movie was called? Um, anyway, not Mr. Strange, Doctor Strange.
Mhm.
And she teaches him how to leave his body. In one of the first scenes, when she's accepted him into her world, at least to show him what it was about. I think it was the first meeting. Then she throws him out in the street, and he has to sit there and contemplate what was going on. She walks up to him and she just pushes him in the middle of her chest very strongly. And as in the car accidents, both these men were thrown out of their bodies, and the spirit was separated instantaneously. I do see it that way. If you even watch the first half hour of Doctor Strange, you'll see that happen. And I do see it that way. In the course of the movie, when he's introduced to the dark forces, there is the bad guys, and there's a group of them. And he gets into a fight with one of the men on a spiritual level. So the souls of these two men leave their body and they are in fight in the afterlife. And at one point, Doctor Strange had been stabbed by this bad guy, and he needed to have his heart hit with some paddles. And so the lady friend of his in the hospital, which she was a doctor of, as he was at the time, gave him extra energy of electricity, zoomed up his spirit, his body, and he was able to fight the bad guy and put an end to his spirit life. And I have heard and seen when people die, they get the paddles to their chest and they are brought back. And I do believe electricity has a lot to do whether we stay in our body or not. And if we break that, the spirit is then broken free from the body. Both these gentlemen had their bodies damaged, as had my father when he was killed in a car accident. You weren't going to bring him back. Too much damage. But I have seen that, and I've seen people who had the electricity given back to them. Now, in my case, when I had Graves' disease, I had cancer, radiation, and then I got Graves' disease. And both of them not only siphon out calcium, but if in Graves' disease, if you don't take care of your potassium is a form of electrical charges in the body. Helps us as with a couple other, but potassium is a big one. So when I was taking blood tests and they just found out I had Graves' disease, my potassium was so low that when I finally got to the hospital, it was in Chandler, Arizona. From the doctor's office, they called me, and the lady was always yelling in the phone, "Get to the hospital right now. You have to go right now, right now, right now." You know, really? And my husband was driving, and he got us lost. We were about half hour later than we should have been. They put me right in. And a young doctor came around, and he said, "I just have to tell you, you are 3 hours away from a fatal heart attack." And I looked at him. I went, "Excuse me? Like, really?" I wasn't ready for a near-death experience at that point. And he says, "Potassium was so low that if your heart stopped beating, you didn't have enough electricity in your body, potassium in your body, for us to start it again." I found that very fascinating. So we're talking electricity, but we're not talking of your spirit, because the body generates electricity of which the spirit needs to be part of. I hope I'm not confusing you guys. Okay, you got that? All right. I found that just amazing that we're so interesting flesh-wise, but without the flesh working with electricity. Remember Doctor Strange? If you see the movie, the paddles, womp womp, he's gone again. It gave him more boost, and the electricity in my body was so low. Shard, I talked a few times ago. well, how many death experiences have you had, Shar? And she lists, and I go, well, I kiss that Barney Stone one more time. We're about like cats with 9 lives.
Mhm. Mhm.
you know, but the universe has set forth a path for both of us, and I trust, and I have to, that no matter what happens in our life, there is a plan. Now, wait a minute, I don't want mamas and papas to call me up and rag on me how terrible it was. I wasn't predicting this and that for people. Listen, it's been very difficult for me to accept not only this gift, but to be put on the spot and get what I get and then have to give it to you. At times it's hard. It's hard because death, dying, passing over, grieving, new starts after whatever, whatever. I picked the hard stuff, because that's what
Well,
I was
especially
intended to do.
especially if there's a child involved.
Oh,
If,
terrible
if it's a
story.
parent, I mean, that is the biggest loss that somebody can
Yeah.
experience.
I almost lost my son and came real close. He was playing football and someone pushed his face into the grass and they just put manure all over it. And he had asthma. And so it was after I left my husband and a girlfriend named Jenny, Ginny. She says, why don't you go to the hospital in Roseville, park your car, and we'll go to the music circus and then we'll come back. And unbeknownst to me, my ex-husband was trying to call me that they had taken my son to the hospital where I had parked the car. And so when we got back, I got notice, uh, and he was in the hospital and he almost died. It's like I've kissed that shadow. It was very scary. I'm also very allergic to a lot of things, and he seems to have taken after me in some ways. That was a very scary event. But things like that happen to all of us all the time. We slough it off, and then we start thinking about it and go, "Wow, that was close." Um, and I could entertain you kids all night long with the close calls. I rode horses, and I was running and jumped over a rattlesnake. And one time, my horse got scared on Auburn Lake trails, and we went over a cliff. I mean, I've had those close calls that make you think, "Am I missing a message here, everybody?" you know. But let's go on. So, the topic tonight: what happens at the time of death? I gave you a few examples of them leaving their bodies. Two of the men, the ones that were thrown out of their body, they didn't go through what we call the typical steps. The young lady that died of leukemia had been going through the steps, but her spirit wasn't free. She didn't go through the normal steps that I'm going to describe because she hadn't had enough life to miss people or to understand. So they kept her quiet with medication. A lot of times, and I've told people, well, I would like to experience that. But more likely, if it's possible, I think the family would not want any older people, relative, I'm going to speak of us, older people, to suffer. But we also have to think in consideration the family that would be with us at that time.
Mhm.
I don't want to go through some of the steps because the kids would watch that, because I imagine that would be a place where the children would come around, and you have to make it as peaceful as possible because the body has a natural checklist of things that need to happen because we're programmed to have a life but an ending, and we can't have the ending without going through steps. Rather, you die of the after effects of having a heart attack, cancer, emphysema, stroke, or whatever those things that can take us at the end of life. Even uh, what I call soft heart death. And you'll see these old people, they lived a long time. Hopefully, they're older. And the heart just goes, man, I'm just pooped. I'm going to give up the ghost. Time for you to go home, honey. And this little heart's working. We're so it's so difficult. And that individual going through the soft heart process will go through what I'm going to mention next. Okay. So with the girl with the uh, leukemia, I did not have any sense that the mother witnessed anything that would have given her more trauma because the girl was asleep. But when I came into that moment with her, and she looked at me, startled me. Like that taught me, which I knew already, that people like myself have a lot of access to time. If I have access, can you imagine what the spirit people have? And we've talked to that. Spirit people tell me all these trips and things they're doing, all amazing. And then, I'm going to divert because it's not on the program, but I'm going to say how many people have asked for readings from me. And we'll talk about family, friends clear across the world. And one family I talked to quite a bit in Italy, their girls live in the United States. And I'll put my mind to the couple in Italy. That's where they retired. And then they'll want to say something about how are my girls doing? And I will go to each of the girls, go back to them. They're all got young career paths. They're all working. It's just wonderful to hear about this. And it's fun for them to catch up without bothering them. And that's really, families are interesting. Love it. So I blend with the family, the husband and wife. And then I go to the United States and I find them in their particular part of the United States. I go back, get the answer, and they come back to me within 3-4 seconds. How in the dickens does that work? Well, I think it's interdimensional. But with that, I'm a lonely human being in this meat jacket. Excuse me, everybody. Because sometimes I'll call it that because that's easier to live your life thinking, well, this is just a jacket I'm wearing. But it tells me that the thought, like in What Dreams May Come, Robin Williams, he only thinks of something. Oh, I was going to mention that movie. I'll mention real quick. What Dreams May Come, when he gets killed in a car accident, same process, very quick. He's out of his body next second. He's in his wife's dreams because we create the visual of what we want to see. And he creates the beauty of his wife's paintings. And they're beautiful, unbelievable artwork. If you can rent that movie, do it just for the visuals of him landing in his particular heaven with the artwork of paintings of landscapes too beautiful for me to even comprehend to tell you. Wonderful, wonderful. There's another example of being flicked out of the body in a second. There's no contemplation. There's nothing that they can think about other than it's right now. And I have been in a real bad car accident. I was 18 years old. And I was driving around Hillsdale and Madison Avenue, and a car flipped coming the other way. Shar, you know that area? It was raining. And he flipped in the air and came down on our car. There is no thinking, oh, am I going to die? Am I going to get out of the way? I did get out of the way, and the police asked me, how did you know where to go? I turned my wheel. Well, one of those Jesus had the wheel statements are made here. But at the same time, there's no thought of, oh, am I going to die? What's it going to be like? Am I going to suffer? You don't think it's too fast, but slow motion. You don't have time to think of those things. So these accidents that we hear about, it's very quick and there's no pain. It's not a shocking thing. It's like, fudge, what happened? Statements. And we are never abandoned at death, ever. I have never, ever seen anybody not have somebody right there. Even my own grandmother, I showed up at her bedside when she died in a senior home.
Well, I remember my almost fatal that I
which
had.
one, honey?
I don't know. The one up in the mountains on New Year's Eve, on New Year's Day. And in fact, it turned out later my car got recalled for the steering wheels locking up. It was a big recall. And I had hit some black ice, and I went to. My dad taught me how to drive in the snow. He grew up in Ohio, so I know how to drive in the snow. I hit this black ice, tried to turn the steering wheel, and it wouldn't turn. It locked. And so I ended up. I was going westbound on 80, coming down the hill from Tahoe.
Oh,
so the car completely went this way
on 50.
And I saw, and I was at that real canyon part before you get to Tahoe.
Oh, okay.
And all I saw was the snowbank, and I thought at first I did one of these, like, oh my God, I'm going to hit. And then the funny thoughts started coming. I got real calm, and I thought, well, okay. And then I thought, it's going to be a hell of a view. And that's what I thought. It's going to, I'm bracing in, right? It's going to be a hell of a view when I go over. So I didn't know there was a guardrail under there. So the car bounced off the guardrail, and it ended up twisting back the other way. And I look up, and there's a logging truck coming.
Oh, no.
And I'm like, oh, hell no. So I hit the gas. I ended up spinning this way against the hill. But at that moment, like you say, if I was so calm that all I could think of was it's going to be a hell of a view.
Well, I did talk about this a few weeks back about my driving from downtown Sacramento Arden Fair. I
Hmm.
lived in Pollock Pines, and one reason I moved out of Pollock Pines after 3 years is the snow. And this accident actually propelled me the same way. I was going home, and I
Hmm.
entered what they call a whiteout situation. Road is gone. You cannot see. I'm very sympathetic with the people back east. When you see 50 cars on the freeway, absolutely, because that would have happened to me. And the steering wheel was not tight, and I felt like someone said, "Let go." And the minute I did, my right tire hit the curb, and I bounced to the left, and then I drove
Hmm.
out of it. It was very quick. If there had been a car around, I would have hit it. But the next few days, I spent a lot of time going up and down the hill until I realized that spot. And if I'd gone over, I would have been disappeared. I had a geostorm blue. It would have been buried in the snow. Yeah, both of us have. I mean, we should have a show on comparing,
Just
have people
comparing
call in
events.
on near
There'll be so many
misses.
times where,
That
yeah,
would be it. Write that down, Shar. That's near misses. Yeah.
near misses. Yeah,
How
I
many?
mean, how
So
many lives do I have? My cat has 9. What do I have?
we're both the cats. I have two black cats. Maybe I should say I'm one of the family there. So I've talked about how fast it happens, how you don't think for those
Mhm.
who've had family and friends in car accidents, it's fast but slow motion. And you don't
Yes.
think about how damaged you're going to be. You are
Yep.
thrown out of your body at that second. Your spirit doesn't stay unless you don't die instantly. I'm talking about the
Right.
instant death ones.
Right.
You are in shock because I did get injured with the car. Um, my foot got injured. I never felt anything. Never felt a thing. So there was bruises. I didn't feel any of those things. Then have been other accidents, falling off horses, and someone said, "Oh, you have bone degenerative disease in your back." I go, "No, the horse horses kept throwing me," and I had those kinds of things, and you never feel it. Kind of shock. So those even get most damaged body,
Mhm.
and then they die usually in shock. So those of you who've had family that have been killed, it's not, you know. Um, I will mention one more, and then I'll go on. There's a friend of mine. Life is busy, so we've kind of lost connections. But she's given me permission to talk of her son, and I will write up extensively. I mentioned him a few times, maybe 6 months back. Jason got hit in front of the house where Sue was visiting her cousin,
Mhm.
and he was going to change her car tire. Ran across the street and drunk driver hit him. Sue heard the accident, went out there, and he had been terribly injured. I mean, he was dying. We're talking never to be recovered type of situation. And
Mhm.
she's so psychic and so amazing. I meet the most wonderful people who are so gifted, and I think, how can I talk them into doing this job? It wasn't meant to be. She just that way, and she actually pulled his spirit back into his body. And at the moment that happened, of course, the boy never felt anything. I get a blackout feeling with him, like instant blackout, and then he was standing, and he heard his mother pleading with him to get back in the body. And then he did this. And then she had that flash of moment. Wait a minute. If he's back in his body, it will not be him anymore. His head was damaged and was never going to get fixed. And that moment she said, "Jason, you can go on, go on." And then he calmed his voice, his breathing down, and he did leave. And we've had amazing stories. I'm going to write this all up. In the same house, a cousin killed himself, and I talked of the portal that the boy saw. It was amazing. So Jason, we've talked in theater in the round in a group, and he showed up. It was amazing storylines. But with him also, uh, when we got together, I was entertaining on a cruise ship, Crystal Harmony, October October of '92, and I came back to 10 messages on my machine that Jason had been killed. And I talked to her. And when he spoke to me, he said, "Grandpa told me that they gave me more time." And I said, "Really?" So it appears that even in a death situation, you are to leave. But if nothing else is going to change the outcome of your passing, they can give us more time. And I said, well, how much more time did you get? He said, 6 weeks. So from the accident, when I told Sue, she went like this. And of course, everybody on RSS can't see that I put my hands in front of my face and went like this. She was very dramatic when she did that. I says, what's going on? She says, 6 weeks ago, we had a power outage in our house. And I asked him to go downstairs and throw the switch on the fuse box. When he did, unknown to him and I, he looked down and saw he was standing in water up above the
Wow.
rubber of his shoe, and he did not get electrocuted.
Wow.
And I said, what did he do in that time? This is true. I mean, I've written it up. She's written up. She's given me permission. I will write this. And one of the 8, 9 books I'm going to write was all about Jason. He deserves his own novella size book. And I says, oh my gosh, I've never heard of that. I've never heard of that before. So it appears that we are to no longer speak our word, to influence life, allow to go on for all the reasons that I can't answer.
Hmm.
Because in that 6 weeks, he needed closure with the dad that didn't touch base with him, with the half brother that never had a relationship. He wrote letters, he reconnected, he fixed a chicken or bird coop for his mother, he finished projects. Then he got hit with a car and he was gone 6 weeks later. And Sue's a wonderful lady. Just fabulous. I didn't have permission to tell of her last name tonight because I didn't tell her I was talking about her because it just popped in my head. But she's had this chicken coop and things around the house. And when I spoke to her about the accidents and us talking about it, it occurred to both of us that the extension of time means that there's a buffer around our death time. And I'm not sure how many of us are given that extra time, but it would be obvious to us. Say someone has a stroke and they die, but they're brought back. And maybe they're here 2 or 3 weeks and they have another stroke. That's that buffer. When I got the message for me, um, and I'm older. Of course, I'd like to retire, but what am I going to do with my retirement job? Guess what? This, right? So stay worth it, Nancy. But there will be a day when the universe will say, you can't talk to that person. You got him on the calendar in a week. I feel like there's a day when I no longer can influence the people around me for whatever reason. It could be a family member. We don't know. And then I get to go home. And I've talked to you about my mom and dad both being in spirit. Of course, they would be at my age, unless they were in their hundreds. But, I had a flash of myself in the afterlife visiting family. And there was an aunt, my mother's father's sister. Oh, Aunt Hazel was wonderful. 8 marriages. And she lived in one of those old Victorian buildings in Sacramento. And I'm talking to her in my vision. And it's like a family reunion. And this is so real to me. And people go, oh, Nancy, you're just crazy lady. I can't help it. This is what I get. And the first time, I'm getting off track, I got to talk quicker. Or do you have a class tonight?
No.
Okay. Let me keep going because I got so much to talk about.
Well, along that line, really quick, I have had a vision of myself and my mother in the afterlife.
Mhm.
It came via a dream,
Mhm.
and I didn't realize I didn't
You
even
were
consider
dead,
that
huh?
I was dead in this afterlife. But I remember going to visit her, and she lived up like the well, like it's just a housing place, just like this, a
Mhm.
suburban thing. And she had this real beautiful house, and she was showing me around this place. And I'm looking around, and she says, "Yes, and look, I've got all my flowers over here. I've got all this going on over here." And it didn't occur to me until I met this strange man that I had no clue who it was. And he says, "Well, this is her afterlife. This is it. This is where your mother lives here.
This is her
Yeah,
heaven.
this is her heaven." And
Like
then it dawned on
Robin
me. Yeah,
Williams when he passes over into his
yeah,
wife's paintings and the artwork. You guys just have to it's just amazing. Well, I want to get back on track, and then this other part's really important
sure.
too, right? No, thank you, Shar. Please interrupt anytime. I was working. I entered the Spirit of Grace Church, Universal Christ of the Master, May of 1990, and I studied under them for 15 years. Right? past life regression work, stage work, readings, presentations. I mean, you think that I did it. And very soon after I got into this, they started having groups because I was wanting to not own experience, but they had income coming in. And of course, I jumped right at the chance. And so I helped this mom and pop church with a little Madonna in the window kind of a thing. And so unbeknownst to me, there was a lady there, and she is built like I am now, a little bigger, we blossom, we get a little older. And she was very white hair and she had it full, kept herself very nice. If you anybody in the audience that has a gift go into my memory of her, you'll see her sitting there. And she was very upset about her husband dying. And so I said, "What's his name?" And "Are you there? Come on, show up. She wants to talk to you." And I saw this visual of him in his heaven. And they at one time must have had money because he was a safari kind of guy. And he had his trophy room set up with his, unfortunately, the heads of animals on the walls, or visuals of that for himself. And of course, I'm always thinking I'm going to make it up. But I described him and I always thought, well, I'm crazy. I'm making this up. I saw him. I described him. She said, "Oh, that's him. That's him." And I says, "Well, he's not alone. There was this wicker basket in front of where he was standing, then his desk, and then the wall with all these animals." And I kind of, "Ooh, okay, he's got something with the horns going this way." And, it was very graphic. And there was this beautiful young woman sitting on a stool. And he had dark light hair. He must have been a little younger than her. I mean, a younger man. He showed himself as younger because he was dark haired. And there was this very slim, lanky kind of gal. And I described her to, I think her name was Margaret or Marcia or something. I can't remember. Marilyn. I remember being M. And it's been 30 years, so I doubt she's with us. She's probably with him now. And he had described this beautiful young woman. And unbeknownst to the group, she had a teenage girl, 20-year-old, that age group that killed herself all those years ago. And it wasn't her husband that she wanted to know about because I think she believed that I had sight. She wanted to know if her daughter was okay. And the daughter was sitting there with her hand behind her rump, leaning back and looking at me, looking at Dad, looking at both of us. And I described this, and the woman started crying. She says, "I wanted to know if you could pick up my daughter. She died so many years ago." Of course, everybody in the audience went, we were just all choked up. At that moment, I realized I wasn't insane, that I was actually doing this. And what a responsibility. Talk about living on the edge of a cliff. How many of you in the audience would say, "Oh, let me do that"? Not me. I just go, "Oh, I go into a group of people and I'm going to entertain and go, 'Oh, this is fun. Who's entertaining?' Everybody looks at me and goes, 'You are.' I go, 'Oh.'" I want to now go to a place where some of your family's passing away, and I'm going to go and say they're dying of what we call a natural, there's all kinds of ways that people die. This is a natural death. A natural death could be, unfortunately, any kind of condition that comes upon anybody, from heart condition to stroke to, unfortunately, cancer or just old age. And I found a lady, a friend, and unfortunately, she hooked up with two different men, and they both died on her. And then she met another man and felt crazy. She fell in love with her. And I says, "Enjoy him." Because I did see her surviving him also. And she was kind of perturbed at me for saying that. But I sometimes think if I get the answer and I'm not asking, it's something I have to give. But I don't just walk up to strangers. This is my circle of people that I'm very close with, right? Okay. One of the gentlemen had been dying of a natural cause and in the home, and she was taking care of him. And during the process, he was, sorry, everybody, he was weakening, I would call it. And one morning, he got up and put his clothes on. He joined her for breakfast. He made some phone calls. He went to bed and then died. And that is not uncommon. That is very, very common. And it's like you either have the veil open up and you're reaching for invisible peoples. You tell people, "By the way, where's my suitcase? I'm taking a trip. By the way, they're telling me I'm going to go at noon tomorrow." Guess what happens? They leave tomorrow at noon. That is very, very common. My father, unfortunately, was able to know that too. He took life insurance policy out uh, effective April 1st, 1955. It was effective at midnight. He was killed at 2:30, April 1st, 1955. I get the gift from him, but he had a knowing and he accepted it and didn't try to change it. And the reason my mother shook her hand at me, don't you ever do this, because my last words to him, please don't go, we'll never see you again. And he allowed that to happen. And we talked of last time synchronicity, how I came to Northern California from being born in Southern California, but we're getting off track. The bolt of energy reaching for people is very, very common, very exciting, very baffling. If you're not in a comatose condition, and unfortunately, there are some conditions that the hospice people step up and say, we can't allow that person, the patient, to suffer from cancer, or a stroke could put you in a coma. Those kinds of things limit us from seeing those exciting events. And they do happen with consistency. When a person's getting closer to death, there is a cooling down. Shara's going to have a gentleman on next week or the week after, going to talk about poltergeist activity in his home with his mother. And he did notice, and he talked to me, he said her hands and feet, even her up to her knees, were going blue to
They get
black.
cold. Mhm.
And what happens is our body core, our heart says, by the way, out there, we need some more energy because we're shutting down. We're going to try to keep the heart going as long as possible. So the hands get cold and they can get tingly and they can change color. A molting kind of a color comes in, like bruising all over, like seniors can get, but more pronounced. And it is a color. I've not seen it. I think I've seen it once. Sorry.
See, when
uh,
you working in hospice, my question is this: my mother got what I call crabber's hand towards the end, to
what
where
you
her
say, the
hands were
word?
like this. Good. I call it
Yeah,
crabber's hand because I watched Deadliest
okay.
Catch. You know how they get their hands bent. My mother
Right,
got
right.
like that, and she couldn't move. I mean, I had to really
I,
massage her
I've heard of
fingers.
that, and cramping in the legs sometimes, and
Uh-huh.
pointed toes and stuff like that does happen, but it's so rare. I can't. I would think that if she's cooling down, it would be easy not to move our hands about. But
Right,
also with the shutting down process, when we don't want food anymore, we don't want water anymore, the
right.
system
So,
slows down. I think it's natural for people to put their hands. Oh, I'm going to lay my hands flat on my body. We don't. Even in sleep, we'll put our hands and fold them
uh-huh,
up.
uh-huh.
So I sometimes think it's not necessarily a force closing your fist as much as it's more relaxing. Even if you watch this TV, you look down, your hand is kind of curled up a little bit, kind of relaxed. And I think that's with your mother when you get the stiffness is because the electricity is not there before the
Right,
molting,
right,
the
right,
blue
right,
colors come in.
right.
Yeah. And the cooling down happens, we get exceptionally, exceptionally tired, and that's because of food or water, whatever, but it's a process. You get tired, tired, tired to the point of can't
Uh-huh,
move out of the bed. The body says, by the way, we need some more. So the body gets cold. And then you'll notice the core starts heating up. And then they say, I'm hot, I'm hot. It's because the body is working so hard, the core keeping the heart up. Because the last things that do slow down is your heart.
uh-huh.
Your body says, by the way, I think I'm dying. I'm not ready for that. I'm going to keep going. Well, the body's only going through the mechanism of dying, which is a normal, natural step.
Uh-huh.
And you can't go to where I'm seeing unless you go to that next and last step, which is unfortunately, then your body heats up. We go through a trembling. We could have what we call, please, not everybody gets this kind, like a shaking motion that's kind of uncomfortable to watch. Um, and that is uncomfortable to watch and thrash about everything. You can hear the gurgling in here, but the patient is more or less not aware because the body is not being felt.
Uh-huh.
And like I said, a lot of people are so quiet in their mind letting this process happen. Even the last gurgling that you do, I've heard people say they weren't aware of it. The person was laying there, their eyes open and looking around, and then the gurgling as though they're not even hearing it. So even the process slowing down, the breathing, the swallowing, and what you call the last sounds of the throat, the
Uh-huh.
person laying there doesn't even see. And the last gesture, a lot of times, even at the death rattle, I didn't want to say that word. It's just a nasty. word to say. A noise
Mhm.
in the throat sounds much better. You'll see the patient raise their arm up, almost like at the last second before the brain says, "Well, I'm checking out. I don't want to say anything else here. Oh, wait a minute, there's someone coming to get us. Let me go." You're aware
Or
of that.
or they move their eyes in a certain direction
They're
because they're
moving their
seeing
eyes.
somebody.
Yep,
Somebody
you've
was
seen
so
that.
somebody greeted my father through the door at the hospital because his eyes were in that position. So somebody was there that he
And the
was.
body's going through all the steps I just said.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that mind is awake with the eyes to see, oh my gosh. And we've heard of that a lot. Shh,
Mm-hmm.
Joe, I'm sorry. Um, and so the body heats up. The I hate that word. Noise in the throat happens. Their eyes are
The
still
death
awake. The
rattle. Yeah,
brain is still going. They're start now, even though they're four. You'd think, oh, they can't hardly move. How can their arm go up? They do,
they'll
and
reach
that
out. Yeah.
happens more than not. I have actually
Mm-hmm.
seen that.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I've seen the visions.
Mm-hmm.
So when people talk to me about the loved ones, I go, "Oh, one couple." One lady called me and I says, "Oh my God, your father was such a strong-headed man." I said other words.
There's a
He died
question in the
3
chat room.
times. Huh?
Question in the chat room. Michelle says, "What about hyperventilation? Her dad did that for a week before he passed."
I think every condition, hyperventilation, it's not one that I've seen or heard a lot of. It's special to him. Um, I also don't get this man wanted to die. And I feel
Mm-hmm.
like the woman, I was just going to tell a story. Sorry. He's just really wound up. Woman talked to me about her dad. And I said, "Oh, your dad is so strong. He's so mentally strong. He thinks, I am not leaving. You're not getting me out of here." Well, he died 3 times. And he kept coming back because he wanted to leave his body. And she gasped and she says, "Oh, you're right. How did you know?" I says, "I'm watching him. I just back up in time to see him dying." I says, "He's so stubborn." "Oh, dad was awful stubborn. He just didn't want to do it." Well, his mother was there. Did he say no? Well, he didn't want to go with her, evidently. He was all
And,
his
some,
personality.
and sometimes
And
people
people
don't
say,
people don't want to go. My mother, I remember hearing her at night several times in the months leading up to her death, yelling at somebody saying, "I'm not ready yet."
I know. And then there's people who have a suitcase all ready. Get my suitcase ready.
In my suitcase,
Y-
I'm ready to go on a trip. Yeah,
I'm going on a trip. That is heard a lot. Absolutely. "Oh, they're coming to get me. I won't be around much longer. You
yeah.
don't have to worry about me next week." Strange statements. And they're so positive. They're so ready. And like I said, I've seen the other side so often that I go to a place of realizing we're so not knowing. If there's something I'm supposed to do, we all have jobs, right?
Hmm.
That is to make it believable because I wouldn't be able to make up the stories I hear or what I say. Well, or after I talk to a spirit, they give me this most obscure messages. I've had some messages lately. I wish I'd written them down. We should do a show on messages. Um,
Right.
and it's like, oh my God. And it's like, I'm not clever enough. Not clever enough to say what I pick up. And there's food, a lot of food. And I'll say, did they like, what am I looking at? "Oh, you're looking, I know what you're looking at. Uh, a pudding, blood pudding or something." It was so obscure. I went, "Oh my God, I've never known what that is." I want to speak of it. So one of the things I want to speak of is you may be distressed seeing someone die a few times. It's stubbornness, and you need to. I, I heard the story of somebody who heard. He said, "Okay, everybody, say goodbye to her. Let her go," but he didn't. And it wasn't like he didn't do it because everybody else had. He was sitting there and he saw his mother struggling. So he's went, "Oh my gosh, Mom," he whispered to Mom, "Mom, you can leave. I'm here. Bye." And she instantly died. How many times have people heard, "Oh, the dying person is waiting for someone," and there seems to be someone coming from out of state. It may
Hmm.
not even be the one that you think that person wants to see or hear from. but it is in their mind at that moment the one they need to have permission. And you can see them, and you're waiting, and sometimes just give them permission. We'll be fine. We'll be fine. Like in the Marvel movie when Iron Man takes on the bad guy and puts that glove on, he knows he's going to die, right? And he does. And the lady that he's living with, and they have a daughter together, comes over and says, I'll be fine. You can rest now. Give him permission. And we have to sometimes give permission. It's all right. We're going to be fine. And it's just what they need at that moment. So keep that in mind too. And I've had people call me up and talk about it. And I said, just go visit and give them permission to leave. I've told the story many times about my grandmother dying in Auburn Hospital for seniors, not Auburn Faith Hospital, but was near then in Auburn, California. It was across the street from 11795 Education Street where I was working at a telephone company. It was like a block over down a little bit. It was very close. And I had two girlfriends that were very religious people, so they used to sing to her in the afternoon. At 4:45, they went there. And as they left, after they sung, they were leaving at 4:45. They said, Nancy's coming over at 5 o'clock. If you want, now would be a good time to leave so that Nancy doesn't have to see it. And when I went to her 15 minutes later, I drove in, they were leaving, she had died. Perfect example of not wanting me to be stressed. And I went in there, remember, this was an 86, unknowns to me. I went in, of course, I felt her. I held her hand. It was cold and not stiff, but soft, not board stiff, and I felt her over my left shoulder. I says, Bobby, she liked to call Bobby, not grandmother. I says, you have suffered enough, honey. Come on and find Bruce. And I felt her whoosh over my head, like over here. And I just felt this thing, something going past me. It was almost like she was watching her own body. And then when I came, she was worried I was going to be distressed, I think. And I wasn't. I says, oh, my goodness, I didn't know what to say. I think I don't know what to say. But I did say something I felt was appropriate. And what you have suffered enough. She had gone blind and lost her mind a little bit. Long story. You don't need to hear that. But I could feel her passing, and I could feel family within her visual. So she was, and I had a psychic reading years later, 93, 94, of a lady in San Francisco. First thing she said was, your grandmother wants to thank you for getting her, telling her to leave, that she had suffered enough. Talk about a moment. Oh, that's what I do to people. Now I understand that. I think one of the things that people have a hard time accepting is that they may be ignored, but the people unseen in the room are not. If they see it, don't say to them that you're not seeing something. Marge and Fran were a couple of people that I met in Spirit of Grace Church in Citrus Heights, California. And Mom was getting to a place where she was going to have to figure out where she wanted to pass away. And Marge talked to me. She says, she's pointing to the ceiling, and all of us see little flickers of light. I said, well, that's our spirit family. She's not saying that. She says there's fairies in the room. Well, I'm not going to ignore that. If there's fairies in the room and she's seeing fairies, that's because that's what she wants to see. It was an enlightened moment for Fran, the mother. She was in her mid-80s at this time. And she was just watching all the spirit activity in the room, not necessarily knowing who they were, but the flickering of lights made her realize that she was looking at fairies. So we can't judge what they're saying. We can't correct them, because what they're seeing is what they need to see to have a pass over that's peaceful. They say the brain stays enlightened with electricity for 20 seconds or more. And I do believe that. My last words to my mother, well, you got yourself in a fine fix. And I remember her thinking, don't ask me how I knew this. Oh, I know what those words are. And I'm not going to go more on that. And it was like she chuckled, like, oh, what's going on? Oh, I know what this is. And it was quite a moment, So when I want to go to the next step, then you say to me, oh, Nancy, electricity, you were going to die. Oh, electricity calms the brain, electricity down. It has nothing to do with our soul. Our soul is generated by the divine. It does have essence to it. People have seen me and a group, even like talking like this, I feel my life force is filling out like this. it's like it energizes me to think about these things. I love it. And I feel like um, when we leave our body, people say, oh, at the top of our body. I actually have seen a video, which you can Google, in, oh, fudge, Malaysia area, in the hospital, in the corridor, was a person who dies. They had what we call the night cameras on. And as the person lay in bed, you could see this soul just lift right out of the body and float away. Wow, that's how it's done. There was a family that talked to me, and they said, God, Grandpa just wouldn't. He just hang on, and he's hanging on. So they gave me his name, and they gave me the time of his death and where. And I went back in time, and this is after the fact, want to know what was going on. And he was absolutely sound asleep, about 3 feet above his body, whole body laying right in the air above his flesh. And I don't remember his name. I go, what is this about? He was tired, but he didn't want to be in his body, so he floated above it. And to the left was the mother and the father. And I remember looking at the mother. I go, well, what are you doing? And she reached up with both her hands and grabbed him like this and shook him, woke him up. You don't have to stay in the body. You just need to be nearby. Remember Shirley MacLaine? She talked in the movie out on a limb where she was in Peru and she flew into the stratosphere and she looked down and she saw a cord. We can create that cord. Just because I haven't seen the cord doesn't mean it doesn't follow me everywhere. But she saw the cord in the stratosphere connecting herself to the hot tub that she was sitting in. And so that's where that idea came from. And with that, this man floating above it, I almost saw like a bridge between his floating essence and his body. And mom just went, wah, wah, wah. Shook him like this. And he sits up, he lifts his head up and he sees her. And she says, come on. And they left. And then he died. But the family knew something was strange. And when I explained it to it, they started laughing. Yeah, that's just like him. Haven't we seen our men watch a lot of TV and they kind of just go to sleep, right? They're laying back. Like you can visualize this. That's what he did. All right. So I wanted to mention how people have seen out of the body. In the movie Ghost, when Patrick Swayze goes to the hospital with the wife and his dead body, in a glass partition to the side was a man that was going to die. And they were frantically working on this. And he was young looking to me, 50 something. He was young looking. They were frantically, this man's too young to die. Well, Patrick Swayze goes into this emerging room and there's another man standing there. And the conversation was kind of back and forth. And this gentleman standing next to Patrick Swayze, he points at that guy. He says, oh, he's going to die. This is how it happens. And from the upper torso to his face, out of his body came sparklets and energy, and it was absolutely beautiful. That's how I see it mostly, though I have seen the whole thing float out at once, like in car accidents. And on the web, if you type in motorcycle accident spirit scene between ambulance and the patrol car or something, and the spirit is right above where the accident was. And he's looking down thinking, well, that was fast. That's what they look like. And it could be thrown out, or if he dies, he just steps out. Now, there was a man who died on somewhere else, and he had been bicycling with his son, got into the driveway. There was a little bit of hill, and he was standing there, the bike, and he had massive Widowmaker, a heart attack. And he fell down, and he goes, well, that's strange. And then he stood up, and he went, feels funny. And he looked down, and his body and the bicycle started rolling down the hill. And he looked at his body, and he's trying to get back into it. It didn't happen. So you can come out of your body, just roll out of your body. Or you can stand up out of your body, and you don't even know it initially. Those two people in the car, the men I talked to, they were whole as though they saw themselves just bam, like that. Absolutely amazing. Float above the body. Okay, I did that. And the car accident. In a hospice, hospital, or care home, most will be given medications to soothe comfort to be put in a coma. So the last final stages will be not frightening to the patient, but to the family. A lot of times it's to the family. It is. And I did bring up Doctor Strange, the movie about the master pushing his chest. And that would be very good for you to watch the first part of the movie if you don't watch Marvel, at least that part, because that's how I see it instantaneously. And there was no death. She kept his body okay. It wasn't a death thing. But being pushed out of the body, absolutely. And the flying in the sky. How many of you had out of body experiences, or have you had dreams where you feel like you're flying above the trees? Hello, me too. That's your spirit saying, I want to take a night flight. Why not? I've been places, I've had meditation classes where I do a meditation about looking at Earth and looking from the moon, from the planets, and then we go further out and you can't see the Earth anymore. And then I say to the people, and how big is your problem? You can't even see everything anymore. I want to bring up a few movies, and I'm going as fast as I can, everybody. Natalie Wood's last movie called Brainstorm, 1983. Louise Fletcher is the scientist as well as Natalie Wood's husband in the movie. And she's a fragile person, fragile health. And they are putting a machine together that you put on your head so that you can have input from magnetic tapes of all kinds of things, from learning to watching a movie. There was one death in the movie before that, and a fella has put a tape on of pornography, and it kills him. And so they're wanting to know what he was seeing. And it was sort of a film now that someone else can put on their head. And when they did, that individual did die also. So then they're really afraid of it and they want to close it down. And in one evening, Louise Fletcher's character goes to the office she's working. She's smoking like crazy, crazy. Remember, 1983, everybody still smoked. Not me, but everybody did. And she goes into a heart attack event and she puts the helmet over her head and she sits in the chair, and you could tell it was a very uncomfortable scene for me because I'm watching someone die, and she had it down. She was going through wonderful acting. I hope she got a Academy Award. I don't think she did. This was a low budget, but and Natalie Wood was wonderful in it, of course. Anyway, she is capturing because that helmet is on. She's turned the machine on. That magnetic tape is capturing everything she's experiencing. Now, why did I bring that up? Most of the time, people have said near death experiences. I had a life review, and they do it very tastefully, and they create the visuals of these important points in her life, from the most rewarding to not rewarding. So she sees both children, she has a child, she does this and that, and then there's other incidents were terrible, but she had experienced all of it to have that review. So when you become a spirit person, and I have an after death vision of myself, Shar, and I'm with a group of people and Hazel, one I spoke of earlier. And
Mhm.
what they're telling me is very generic. It says, of the life you just left, what was interesting? Would you like to share? I want to know, did you have fun? How did you die? They're asking questions, and you go, as though I'm divorced from that life already, telling the
Mhm.
family, oh, this was fun. You know what I did? That's how it works. And so she's going through the visual of these points, not non-emotional. And then the next thing she says is, remember, I feel like we create a visual that we need to have is all the heavenly host, all the angels in the tunnel. And it's absolutely gorgeous. And then at the end of the tunnel is the divine. And she's starting to go through that. And it's beautiful. So Natalie Wood's movie, Brainstorm, implying the magnetic storms that are brains. 1983, if you get hold of that, it is, believe it, on YouTube. Okay. Uh, I did add, Natalie Wood actually died before the movie was over. She was the one that went on the boat with her husband, and she ended up in the water. Her greatest fear in life was to drown. Guess what happened? She drowned. So she has a sister, and the sister filled in the last scenes of the movie for her. And of course, you want to watch it and see if you can tell the difference, right? One of them that I thought would be fun to tell you about was Frighteners, 1996, of Michael J. Fox. It is a fun movie. He's a Ghostbuster. He had a near-death experience. He came back and he could see ghosts. So two ghosts buddies of his create an opportunity to make money by going to people's home, pretending it's haunted, which it was because they were in it. And frighteners mean Michael J. Fox makes a little income by shooing these two friends who are ghosties away. In the process of this, I forgot the people's names, so apologize. There's a woman who I'm going to say potential girlfriend shows up, and she is finding out that there's a lady in the home living with a mother who seems to be in distress. She goes there and meets her, and then she finds out this grown woman used to be a teenager who was a co-defendant of a man who was killing people in a insane asylum. And it's clear that the woman is not all there, right? So she goes into the home and puts pieces together. And what it's about is that the ghostie, the bad guy who is murdered, comes back to the girlfriend and says, "Let's kill more people," and she's all for it. Okay. So at the end of the movie, when the battle goes on, it's very, very fun. Very fun. I recommend The Frighteners, 1996. At the end of the movie, there's a big fight in the house. Michael J. Fox is accidentally killed, and he is going through the tunnel. He's going to head up to heaven. And as he's doing so, the lady friend that's now his cohort and trying to get rid of the bad guy and the girlfriend hits the lady with a shovel or something. And as Michael J. Fox is going to the heavenly realm, he looks behind, and the ghostie, the bad guy, and the spirit of the lady friend, who was a co-murderer, they're coming up behind him. He goes, "Wait, wait, 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 wait! I'm going to the good place. What are you doing here?" All of a sudden, the 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 earth cracks open, and it turns blood red, and these monsters come up and go, "Oh, oh, oh," and pull them down to hell. Very visual, very not disturbing. Kind of you're going to go, "Yay, the bad guys! I mean, yay!" They're never going to haunt Earth again. The next scene I want you to watch is, of course, it's at the end of the movie. He lands on terra firma, or supposedly, and it's a park-looking environment. And there's two ghosty guys, his buddies in the movie, are standing there waiting for him. "Wow, this is great," Michael said. "This is heaven. This is wonderful, right?" And so while he's standing there and talking, it's gorgeous. It's like the prettiest park you've ever seen in your whole life. His wife that had died, it's explained very early in the movie, comes up to the side of him, and he looks at his dead wife, and he's just thrilled. And all three of them then say, "Oops, you got to go back." "No, I don't want to go back. I want to stay here with my wife." "You have a lot of life to do." And all of a sudden, he's propelled back like he's falling, and he goes right back in his body because the lady friend that was on the campaign to get rid of this ghosty guy and his girlfriend breathes life back into his body. And he wakes up, and of course, everything's wonderful. And then they become partners in ghost busting. And it's really cute. I mean, it was not his time. The point I was trying to make is, as many times as I've heard near death experiences, so many of them get over to a place they think they can stay. And the people there say it's not your time. And then someone said to me, "How would they know?" Remember me saying about the cord? That essence, that piece of you is connected to the earth or to the body. I'm not positive, but I know there's aspects of me, maybe just my eyes, but there's a part of me that goes to Italy, to the United States, back again, and to my chair so I can give a reading. There has to be some part of me that moves but comes back. I would like to know. I know I'm alive in this chair. I do a lot of video sessions and I'm looking at them. And the minute they get a question all around the world, then I can go to that person. I have a lady in England I speak to quite often, and it takes me only a second to connect. A lot of distance, everybody. So I want to say same thing. When you're alive, the essence, most of it is going, but you're not solid. You're almost sparkly to them. They look at you, you're not formed completely. It's like a part of you is still back in the body that's going to be revived. You're not solid. And when someone looks at you, it'll be looking at a ghost person fully with clothes on, like I told you, the two men, versus somebody who only has partly clothes. You go, well, you're not complete. You're not whole with us. You have to go back. And that tells me when I have to see that, or people who have near death experiences, I know that they've been told you're not 100% complete. That's how they know you've got to go back and finish your life. And you may not want to. You don't have a choice. Though people have said you can have a choice. In my world, in reality, you're going to pick to go back because those near death experiences, when people get the choice, they come back or we wouldn't know about it. That's because they already know the answer you're going to give, but you're the one that has to solidify your own thoughts. That's how that happens. There's a couple more movies, and I'm talking really fast, everybody. Um, Meet Joe Black. I love this movie. And Anthony Hopkins and Brad Pitt, and that is also on YouTube. I did look it up so you can see it. And Anthony Hopkins is a very wealthy, important person in his world. And Brad Pitt is supposedly Mr. Death. I'm not going to call them that. I like to call these people the greeters. And Brad Pitt has stopped Anthony Hopkins from dying. Remember, I said earlier it was going to be Anthony Hopkins' 65th birthday in a few days. But Brad Pitt has not had a life to experience human life. And he asked Anthony Hopkins to let him come to his home and involve himself in life to have a sense what life's about because he kind of lost the connection. Okay? Very good movie. The point I was making with that is I do believe we have extensions. You can't ask the child, the adult, grandpa and grandpa, by the way, we know you're not well. Can you kind of come back, give us 6 more weeks? We don't always have those answers. I was able to talk to Jason and grandpa who greeted him. And grandpa's the one that told me we gave him 6 more weeks. And I had a lady friend that she was adopted client. And first dad died. And then mom died. And she came to me with terrible anger, frustration. How dare they leave me? And she's like 45, 50 years old, right? And I talked to her and I says, you're very selfish. What are you doing? It's their time. You should be glad they're not in their body anymore. You're selfish because you don't want to be left behind. You don't want to have the responsibility of doing your own life without them.
Mhm.
You have got to let these people be who they are at the moment they need to be where they need to be. She never looked at it that she was selfish. She was grieving because they abandoned her. We have to take responsibility for our lives at the moment we're given that. My mother was 29 with 2 5 and a 6-year-old when dad died. You know, it was I was let's see, 10 when she married again. So she learned what it felt like to be on her own for 3 years. We went to 3 or 4 different homes. We lived with her brother, with Aunt Hazel, with grandma. Let's see, 3 different homes before she got the life insurance policy that my father took out the night he was killed. But the Anthony Hopkins was wonderful as a man that knew he was only given amount of time. Brad Pitt showed up at his home, but he had talked to him in the middle of the night. How many people have heard people say in the families, and that's been told to me, that they had a sense that they were not going to live much longer? That's because they got a voice that told them, prepare. I have heard that a lot. And you've heard people say, what was that? What was that? You had a dream you're going to die. What was that? I've had in the last couple months 2 people who've died, including Dell's mother. When he talked to me, I could taste death. It was so strong. Boom. And I told him she'll be gone before the morning, and she was gone a few hours later. The taste of the death is profound, but it's not necessarily just the person's passed away. It's the ambiance of the air and of the greeter that comes for you. Whether it's grandma and grandpa, but there's also somebody, it feels like, I don't see them all the time, but people have spoke of, and there's videos of someone in the hallways of a hospital that can't explain. I think that's not a bad job. It's not the devil. It's not the death. It's not somebody. It's a comforter. It's like the angel the young lady saw, the greeter, someone that says, it's your time, leave your body. But the family's all gathered. So there's a little bit of slippage there because I've seen the reader quite a few times, like the Brad Pitt character. He's there to experience life. Anthony Hopkins realizes that is him that will be taken. At the very end of the movie, there's a wonderful scene of Brad Pitt and Anthony Hopkins walking over. And then Anthony Hopkins says, "Will it hurt?" He says, "You won't feel a thing. You won't, there will be nothing. Just," and they're gone. It's a wonderful movie. So I encourage everybody to see it. The other one, if we have 2 seconds, transit Transcendence with Johnny Depp, 2014. I only want to bring that up because I do not believe, I'm going to be really, put my foot right here. I'm not positive that we could ever transfer a consciousness into a machine. I wouldn't know how electrical energy of our body, but the spirit is totally different. It's pure energy. I'm not sure we could ever siphon it. If so, it would explain a little bit about the little child that answers the phone, a toy phone, picks it up, it's grandma. But that's a whole different story of someone who wants to voluntarily submit their spirit into a piece of machinery. I don't think that's going to happen, everybody. Maybe the essence of it. And that also leads to beam me up, uh, beam me up,
Right.
Scotty. I think we can do the flesh eventually, but how would the spirit know to connect to it? Not positive I know how things like that happen. But if I nix that idea, then how are we going to travel inner space and black holes, or however it's going to be done? There's a lot of particular little things there that I've thought about and I'm not sure. But I did like the movie because he's terribly in love with somebody and he's dying and he says, I want to be with her. So it's actually kind of a love story, kind of backward love story. And he does go insane, unfortunately. All right. I think I did it, kid. Let me see if there's
Awesome.
anything else.
Awesome.
Um,
I answered as many questions as I could in the chat room.
okay. I just wrote so much. Okay. So one of the favorite spirit visitors came with a client for a session. The young man was at the time a student and had several books in his arms. Okay. I did not address this. Atheist. I've had like 3 of them, and one of them was very famous. And he came in with a student, and the student, I've told this story a long time ago. The student had books in his, he wanted, I have another young man that's asked me profound questions about afterlife. He had some questions for me, and this man came in, had corduroy pants on and a beautiful blazer, and he looked over, he leaned over the table, looked at me, he says, "Would you tell everybody I was wrong?" But that happened in 2001, I think. Well, years later, Professor Gary Schwartz, who's the inventor of the soul phone, saw me in Tombstone, Arizona. So we got together at his house and we were talking. And I says, I had the most unusual experience. I had this blank person, blank, 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 blank name, I said out loud. And I says, he told me to tell everybody that he was wrong. And Professor Gary Schwartz says, "Oh my God, I had 2 other my ladies say the same thing to me, that this individual visited them also. You're the 3rd one." I love it, everybody. Okay, I did it. Sorry. This was a big topic and I wanted it not to be gory or unpleasant. I hope I did a good job for you kids. Huh?
Sounded really good to me. Made a lot of sense. Okay, guys, let's talk about Sunday real fast. We are, ooh, sorry, my back. Lord, that hurt. We started a new book last night after the read. We got done with our scary Christmas stories. So we started a new book, and it's a Rudyard, I hope I said the guy's name right, Rudyard Kipling book about ghosts. And it surprised me that he wrote a book about ghosts. But it's from the late 1800s, so we started that. So we'll be reading that one on I'll be reading that one on Sunday, 6 o'clock, Pacific, p.m. Pacific. And Monday, if everything goes well tonight, we will be talking alien abductions and little children with Mary Ross. And she's supposed to do a pre-record with me at 9 p.m. So about an hour from now. And if everything goes well with that, she will be the guest on Monday. So just in time for that, 6:30 p.m. Pacific. So I will see you guys on Sunday, and hopefully you'll like that new book that we're reading, because I'm really into it right now. In fact, I had to even call Nancy and tell her about it this morning. So, briefly.
Yeah,
So anyway,
yeah.
yeah. So we
We're
talked
trying to
briefly.
find a lot
So
more books. So if you kids have, if you guys out there have some really old books that have really good ghost stories,
hmm
they're getting kind of common here. But we get some of these old ones, they get really interesting.
hmm hmm So yeah. All right. If you like the show, share it with 5 people. If you hated the show, share it with 5 of your enemies. We are equal opportunity here at California Haunts Radio. We're just trying to get the word out of our, our little old show. We're like a little show that could. And yeah, that's what we'd like. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and give you Nancy's information, and I'm going to sign off for the night because, again, I have a 9 p.m. pre-record schedule. So here we go. Push the button. Okay. Websites, nancymatz.com, all lowercase, nancymatzauthor.com. The N, the M, and the A are capped. YouTube.com/nancymatzpsychic. The N, the M, and the P are capped. Nancy's got some books out. Help, Get Me Out of This Funk by Nancy Matz. Two Worlds, Developing Your Psychic Skills. And The Unwilling Sacrifice. And of course, you can get those at Amazon. Okay, guys, I will see you on Sunday, 6 p.m. Pacific, for Ghost Stories from the late 1800s.
Ooh.
Have a great
All
one.
right. Good night, everybody. Give us some thumbs up, hon.